After Ukraine got invaded, I really didn't know how to process it in terms of like posting content. And clearly that's resulted in me not even doing a podcast episode for over a month. And part of the reason why, honestly, is because it's almost hypocritical to be passionate or to be so invested in one global conflict over another. And that's kind of where I find myself right now. It's not so much that, what's happening in Ukraine isn't more or less significant than what's happening in Ethiopia or Yemen or Israel and Palestine. But yet I just find myself not wanting to change topics. So a lot of it's been like, and maybe it's all super trivial, but this is just, I don't want people's attention. I don't want to contribute to people's attention leaving something that is so important or something that's so significant or just something that's so like wildly, unfathomably occurring in our world, because I would just feel like it's that I'm, even though my impact might be this big, it just feels like I don't want to contribute to people's attention being changed to something else. And honestly, like when I posted the Ukraine episode, I honestly thought that this was going to be over within like definitely not longer than a week. I thought within days. I didn't expect Ukraine to hold off Russia. I honestly thought within a few days, like they would collapse and we would be looking at a completely new Ukraine with a puppet government and all this stuff. But that hasn't been the case. And I also thought like, okay, even if they do hold them off, like that's just going to be a couple days. Like Ukraine will push them back. Putin will quickly see that it's a horrible idea and he'll abandon the plan, and that would be it. Like I genuinely thought that this was going to be, not that long. And here we are, how many weeks later? I mean, we're over a month, right? And it's still like the videos that I'm seeing on Twitter and stuff of civilians literally laying dead in the street because now Russia has, I don't know how you want to call it. They're saying that they're retreating as a sign of good faith for negotiations, when in reality they're just getting completely embarrassed because it's such a debacle, and they're probably just backing out so that they can regroup elsewhere. But in the midst of them pulling out of certain areas within Ukraine, like and now, quote, the good guys are coming in. The videos of what the Russians left behind is just disgusting. But I don't know. I honestly, I just didn't want to. I just don't want to contribute to something that puts people's minds in a different place. And hey, as my roaming thoughts, I can and I will do really whatever I want with the episodes. And ideally, like in a dream scenario, the episodes aren't going to be about stuff like this. But again, honestly, to me, it's something that is super important to me, and I don't know, I just feel like it's not time to shy away from it. So yeah, today's episode is going to be a 1-5-10 of Ukraine related topics, because like I said, I still want to be creating stuff and making stuff, but at the same time, I want to feel like I'm contributing good in the world, because it's very easy to get distracted with who slapped who, or, you know, who's calling who a name, or, you know, just extremely trivial stuff that does not actually matter whatsoever. So yeah, we're going to do a 1-5-10 today, and it's going to be on Ukraine topics, primarily Ukraine topics. And what I would, for those watching, okay, so for those watching, I'm going to just pull this up really quick here on my computer so that you guys can see. We've got, my last episode was just Ukraine. And honestly, sometimes before I record a new episode, I go back and I at least listen to the previous one. But I haven't listened to Ukraine since the day after I uploaded it. And so, yeah, but if you like look on my website, I haven't posted there for almost 2 months now, because again, like, I don't really feel good about posting what I think is the, you know, my thoughts on a restaurant, or my opinions on a hotel, or someplace cool that you can go this summer. Like, I don't know, I'm just having a hard time with it. So I have one single post there, and you can see it right there. And yeah, so that's that. We're gonna do the 1-5-10 today. And I've got 8 topics in this little jar. And I think what we'll do is I'll pull the times last. So I'm going to pull the times last. I'm going to pull the topics first, and then we'll see how long we're talking about each one. So first topic is going to be on NATO. All right, first topic is NATO. Next topic is going to be, and for those of you that aren't familiar with NATO, NATO is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. We'll get into it since we're going to talk about it. The next topic is soldiers. Interesting. Okay. Nothing specific yet, like none that says specific people or specific countries. So we'll see what the next one comes up with. The last topic that we're going to talk about today is, got 2 of them. The West. Okay, so this is actually going to be kind of interesting. I'm going to be talking about the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and I'm going to address only NATO, soldiers, and, quote, the West. And by the West, I mean literally the European countries and North American countries. Okay. All right, so let me dump the other topics out, and I will put in here how long we're going to be talking about each one. So we're drawing for NATO first. So I am going to discuss my roaming thoughts on NATO for 1 minute. Great. Could have used more time on that one. And we're going to talk about soldiers for 10 minutes. That's actually going to be, I think that's going to be kind of difficult, but we'll see how that goes. And then obviously that means we're going to talk about the West for 5 minutes. So for those watching, the topics that we did not draw were Russia, Putin, fundraising, check out my socials, Ukraine, and of course, Zelensky, and forgive the spelling, but okay. So let's get into this. What I did is I just essentially pulled up, like I typed in, NATO is the only one that this is going to work for, but I literally just typed in NATO into Google, and I clicked on news just to see like what there is right now. But I'm going to set a timer on my phone so I don't go over. And we're going to do clock timer 1 minute. We'll do the stopwatch. It'll be easier to track. Okay, so 1 minute. 1 minute, here we go. You guys already know the focus. It's still on the Russian invasion of Ukraine. NATO, for only 1 minute. Here we go. I think what NATO's doing is such poo-poo. I think it's like, I'm so disgusted with NATO because the idea of NATO is essentially the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, right? Is, when I was a teacher, I explained it to my students like this. I said, it's basically like a club of a whole bunch of countries that pretty much agreed to a treaty, right? Where if one country gets attacked, like the rest are going to pretend like that's their own country getting attacked. And that's that. So that's 35 seconds. Holy crap. I think it's such garbage because Ukraine wanted to join NATO before all of this, but NATO has not done a single thing to help them. And now Ukraine is basically saying, if it keeps peace with Russia, we are no longer interested in NATO, which I don't blame them one bit for it, because honestly, at this point, I think Ukraine would be an addition and a benefit to NATO and not the other way around, where it's a charity case for Ukraine. And so NATO, I'm extremely disappointed with. And what is the purpose? Okay, that was 1 minute and 1 second, you guys. Oh boy. See, the nice thing about these is you can just like pause it and rewind and go back and play it again so that you can listen to it all over again. The bad thing for me is I'm doing this unedited, so whatever I say goes. All right, so now I have 10 minutes to talk about soldiers. And I'm going to start the timer now. And here's where I'm at with when I wrote down soldiers, the first thing I thought about was the Russian soldiers, right? Because very early on in the invasion, it was coming out that many of the soldiers did not know what they were doing. Literally, they did not know whether the purpose was, they didn't know why they were going to Ukraine, or they straight up did not know they were going to Ukraine. And so early on, and I'm still kind of talking fast because I'm used to the 1 minute timer. So early on, there were a lot of reports of, kids calling home, soldiers calling home or communicating with friends and family that aren't serving in the military and basically saying, like, we thought we were just being, we thought we were doing training exercises. We didn't know that we were going to be seeing actual combat, real life scenarios. They did not know that this was what they were walking into. And then you had on the other, like, you had those reports come out right away. And then you also had reports of like, oh, well, these soldiers, some soldiers knew that they were going to Ukraine, but they were they had the understanding that the people of Ukraine wanted them there to help free them, right, from the Nazified country of Ukraine with the Jewish president. But I digress. Also, by the way, yes, there are national extremists in areas within Ukraine, but let's call a spade a spade. There's national extremists in every country, okay? So whatever. I'm not going to give any substance to this whole like denazify agenda that Putin was pushing. But either ways, there was misunderstandings at the beginning of the invasion for, what Russian soldiers were under the impression of why they were there. And then later on in the during this, in the coming weeks, it was discovered that Russia was using conscripted soldiers, or soldiers that were basically, I'm going to look up a definition, okay? Conscription. Okay, so mandatory service, right? There were reports that there were conscripted soldiers, serving on the front lines in Ukraine. And Putin came out and said, no, we're not using conscripted soldiers. I don't know where you're hearing that, but that's not true. And sure enough, yeah, you were. And what's kind of come to light in the last week or so that I've been reading is that there are serious doubts that at first it was believed that the Russian military leadership was purely incompetent. And now what I've seen in the last week is that it may not necessarily be that it's incompetence. Well, it is incompetence because let's face it, they're getting their butts whooped in certain areas of Ukraine, but that military leadership is pretty much afraid to tell Putin what the real story is, thus leading Putin to believe that there's some, the performance is going a different way, when in reality, it's Russian military should be embarrassed, right? But yeah, so the whole like conscripted soldiers. And then earlier this week, I read that Russia is going to conscript 134,000 additional soldiers. But wait, they will not be serving in Ukraine. Okay, please. You got to be kidding me, right? Like, I don't know. You look at what Russia's doing with the soldier situation, and like some people were like, okay, they sent in the worst of the worst to start, just to throw off everybody from what, how effective they're really going to be. And like, we're sitting here 6 weeks in and I'm like, really? You really think that's what happened? I don't think so. The fact that Putin is calling on Chechen soldiers and Syrian soldiers to basically come in as paid fighters, like, you got to be kidding me. Like, this is straight up embarrassing. And now I just read, was it this morning or last night, that they are hopefully going to be mobilizing fighters in an area of Moldova. I believe it's Moldova, in an area of Moldova called Transnistria. Now, if you're not, and I'm typing it in here because I want to make sure that it is in Moldova, because for some reason Georgia is coming to my mind, but I'm probably extremely geopolitically incorrect there. Transnistria, there it is. Okay. Is officially in Moldova. Okay. So if you've ever heard of Transnistria before, I would assume a majority of people have not heard of Transnistria. And I'll admit, a year ago, I would have no clue what you're talking about. The only reason that I do know about, and I guess I can delete these tabs if you're watching right now. The only reason I know about Transnistria is because of one of my favorite YouTube channels, Yes Theory, did a story or did a video on YouTube, looks like October 11th, 2021. And the title is 50 Hours in a Country That Doesn't Exist on a Map. And it's essentially the story of Transnistria and how this, this region within Moldova essentially has never left the USSR. They've got their own currency system. They've got monuments still honoring the Soviet Union. And what I just saw within the last, it was either this morning or last night, that Russia is going to basically call in some Transnistrian soldiers to fight for Russia, right? And it's just like, I can't believe that it's that one country is going to do so much and get fighters from all these other places in the world in order to invade a country that, let's be clear, yes, they were building up their arms, okay? Yes, the West was assisting them in building up their arms, but this aggressive country invades that country and is now recruiting soldiers from other places in the world in order to continue carrying out this invasion at the same time of getting completely embarrassed. I know I've used the word embarrassed, but I mean, Putin should be very embarrassed on a global scale, right? And what's crazy is the military's performance is just embarrassing, but the West still acts like Russia is this huge, great, powerful military that should be, feared beyond all belief. And it's just ridiculous because, yes, Putin's got the nuclear weapons, okay, but hello, I'm going to Google this one right now. How many countries have nuclear weapons? 9 countries, okay, according to UCSUSA.org. The United States, Russia, France, China, the United Kingdom, Pakistan, India, Israel, and North Korea all have nuclear weapons. So you're going to tell me that this one country who is performing horribly, and they're committing like international war crimes on an unbelievable spectrum in terms of modern day civilization, where this should not even, like, they're murdering citizens. And I'm not even going to like reiterate the tweets that I've read about what these soldiers are doing to people if they're not going to kill them, what they're doing to them. But we're gonna treat this military so high and mighty because they have nukes and they might press them. Look at the list, right? I mean, US, France, Israel, UK, all right? I mean, whatever. I just don't think. And these soldiers, I saw on Twitter, I'll tell you this. I saw on Twitter an audio call from a Russian soldier calling back home to his wife, saying that he stole X, Y, and Z from this home in Ukraine. Makeup. He stole makeup to take home to his wife. And his wife says, make sure you take a laptop or any electronics because we need a laptop at home. So I'm over my time. That's 10 minutes, 10 seconds. I'm going to leave it at that. Okay. Look it up online. That was an actual call. All right. Okay. 5 minutes now on the West. And let me say, this is difficult for me to just like cut off the topic or my train of thought. But again, that's where this challenge comes in mind. So yeah. All right. 5 minutes on the West. The West, you guys, when I'm saying the West, I'm again referring to essentially European countries and North American countries as the West. And really, again, this kind of falls in with NATO. But the West, again, I don't know if it's with like aging, getting older, it just changes something in you, or if I just have more like understanding or a bigger perspective. But it is so disappointing to me how countries that, as a kid and growing up, I've known there's the good guys and the bad guys, right? And growing up in the US, like you grow up and you're taught that you are the good guys and your allies are the good guys, and everybody else, is either getting punished by the bad guys or they are the bad guys. And I understand the complexity of international relations, but when it's so clear cut that there's right and wrong in the world, like with this conflict in particular, with this war, with this invasion in particular, when it's so blatantly black and white that there is right and wrong, what's the excuse for not trying to help what's right? Because again, yes, Ukraine is not a NATO country, a member country, but they had aspirations to join NATO. They had a desire to have stronger ties with, quote, the West than they did Russia under this new administration. I mean, the Ukrainian revolution in 2014, like, it's not like Ukraine was a wild card. Like, they were making obvious attempts and advances at having closer ties with the West. And something like this happens. And it's one thing to not commit troops, right? Which I don't agree with, but that's the case. It's another thing to drag your feet in providing them what they need, right? The US was going to send fighter jets, but then Russia said they'll basically view that as an act of aggression from the US. So then we decide, well, maybe we'll give them to Poland and then Poland can do it. And then it was, well, maybe Poland can just donate their jets from their military, and then the US will resupply Poland. And it's just like literally shuffling things around to make it sound like we're helping, but we don't want to actually have we don't want to stand behind what we're doing, which is such an embarrassment. Like, as a country, you should not have to hide behind your actions, right? If you're going to do something, do so with like the most gusto and the most like, you got to believe in what you're doing, right? And so for the fact that that's how, and the US is not just the only example, right? France basically trying to broker a deal between Putin and Ukraine, and President Macron basically saying like, oh, Biden can't say this about Putin because that's dangerous, and we want to keep him on good terms. And it's like, okay, do we remember appeasing Adolf Hitler before World War II? And then look what happened, right? Like, you can't, I think I tweeted it a while ago, but you can't, it was something like, you can't confront a villain, or you have to confront a villain, or else, I don't know. If you don't stand up to a bully, they're going to keep bullying. And then like Germany, for instance, Germany, they're still buying Russian oil, but then they're sending like 75,000 helmets to Ukraine, which took a month for them to package. Took a month for them to package helmets. And in one country over, they're literally just buying them from a store and throwing them over the border. Like, it's such a, like, oh my gosh, the West. Yeah. All right. That's 5 minutes, 2 seconds. That's the idea of the challenge, is I've got to stop talking when the timer's up. So I don't know, you guys. I mean, like I said, it's morally, I've had this moral, I've been wrestling with the morality behind, you know, contributing something in a meaningful way online, right? Yesterday was April Fool's, and on Twitter, it was like, I love Twitter, but I actually don't know if I can handle being on Twitter on April 1st because of all of the BS April Fool's jokes and April Fool's tweets that everybody posts. And somebody had tweeted it yesterday, or maybe it was today, and they were saying, geez, I really wish people would read things online with the same skepticism as they do on April 1st. And that was like the most relatable tweet ever, because like, what are you consuming online, right? Yes, I know I'm guilty. I'm watching freaking people opening packs of Pokemon cards on TikTok. I get it, right? I will admit it. Does it make me a hypocrite because I admitted it? I don't know. But either way, I'm not denying it. But at the same time, I also don't want to, I don't want to produce something that distracts in a negative way. I mean, distractions are good, right? And then it's a double-edged sword, because on one hand, I'm saying, you know, you've got to live your life. You've got to appreciate the little things. You have to do what is making you happy in life. But at the same time, like, realize what else is going on, right? It's good to be able to go into your world, but also, you know, if you can do something to help or make an impact, or at least make somebody else aware of something that's going on in the world, I think there's a lot of value in that. And so maybe these, you know, who knows how many more of these Ukraine focused episodes I'm going to do. Maybe the next episode I'm going to, you know, have something not regarding this. Maybe it's going to be on sports or travel or something. I don't know. But for right now, this is just where I've been. And again, this podcast is kind of my outlet for, you know, times like now where I haven't put anything up on my website, and I haven't posted, you know, YouTube videos or anything. I literally have not liked a tweet involving anything that I normally like, namely sports. Because again, I just don't want to contribute to unimportant stories gaining traction over injustices in the world. And I'm human, so I definitely know that there's going to come a time where I see a shift again in myself, and I'm not here to say like, yo, I'm perfect and I'm 100% moral and I do no, like I'm just saying this is where I'm at now. And we're all human, so why can't we admit that, right? Thanks for sticking around, you guys. That was the 1-5-10 challenge. Do something good today.